Hello and welcome to our tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to look at some sprites, some sprite sheets, and go into Unity and do a little bit of work in 2D. We're not going to look at how to make a sprite sheet, we're just going to go use it. This is Unity 2018.2, so it's one of, as of making this video, the latest version. So in my project file here I'm going to right click and go import new asset. I'm going to navigate to my desktop and I have this funny imager, and then we have this one here, so this is what we're looking for. So this is our PNG file. Now it's important that if we look at this file here, it already has an alpha channel on it that's saved as a PNG, so if we brought in a JPEG we wouldn't be able to wouldn't come in as a sprite. So you can see here, as I click on this image here, it's called player 1, it's set to texture type sprite. If I brought in a JPEG, it would normally be set to just default. So what we want to do now is we want to take this sprite, and instead of it being a single image, we want it to be a multiple image. And then we want to go to the sprite editor. And it's asking us to apply our change, our multiple image, before we go in. So here we are. So this is the sprite editor in Unity, and up here I'm going to have a look at the slice options. So we're going to use automatic. It says pivot point center, so we'll put this in the bottom, which will be the bottom center. We'll see what that is in a moment. And delete existing. We don't have any existing sort of sliced boxes, and I'm going to hit slice now and see what happens. So, not a lot, you might think. What we have here is each image has been sliced into a box. And what's interesting about this is the location of this little green dot here. So this is the pivot point of this box, like the origin. So what we want is this to be in the same place for each box. Now we're just going to look at this top line here, which is a walk cycle, and I'm going to start here at the beginning, and we're going to try and look for a little bit of consistency so that our character doesn't bob up and down as we try and use the animation in Unity. So first thing to notice is that in this opening image here, that the green dot is directly beside the foot. Here we could maybe lift it up a fraction, and here you can see there's a gap. Now if we don't fix that and raise this box, what will happen is the sprite will appear to float. So collision with the ground as it walks will look incorrect. Now it doesn't have to be, you know, sub-millimeter perfect, but a gap like that will be noticeable. Now there are times when you want a gap if the character is going to jump, but generally you want the very bottom of the collision box, or of the boundary here for the sprite, to touch the bottom of the sprite image. So I'm just very quickly having a little play here and make sure that this is all correct. And you can see that this is something I've rubbed out part of that image in Photoshop. So I'm not going to bother to fix all the rest. We're just going to look at this walk cycle. I'm also going to come here and I'm going to rename these. So I'm going to call this walk 1, and I'm going to select it and go Control C, and this is going to be walk 2. And we can see as we go back here, it has retained its name. This is number 3. Now this is slightly laborious, but well worth doing, because when we go to create our animation, if we haven't oops, so that's number 4, it says it's going to be number 5. So if we haven't renamed these, it's going to be very difficult to know which animation, sorry, which sprite name refers to which sprite. Sorry, I'm trying to type and talk. Obviously, I'm not very good at that. So 7, 8. This is going to be 9 and 10. I'm sure somebody will tell me that there's a very beautiful automated way to do this. 11, 12, nearly there. 13, 14, 15. Oh, we can see the end. 16. Now this is quite a few frames to have in a walk cycle. Quite often you'd only have about 12. 18. Okay, so that's each one renamed, and then we've repositioned the box to ensure that there's collision with the base of the sprite. So now I'm going to hit apply, and it'll take a second or two to implement that, and then we can just close the sprite editor and go back into the main Unity interface. Now you can see here that all of those individual sprite boxes has a name now, and maybe all we needed to do is remember from which number to which number, but that's fine for now. But if we come back to this in a week or 2 weeks, we won't remember which set of numbers is which, so I normally rename everything. So we have walk 1 to walk 18. So what we're going to do very simply is, first of all, we want to create a little world to work in. So if I go to my main camera, you can see that the background is blue and it's a solid color, so that's fine. Well, let's just make that black. So that's going to be our background. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to create a folder. So I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call this animations. And inside my animations folder, I want to create an animation. So this is what I want to create, an animation. I'm going to call this Spaceman Walk. Okay, so that's going to be my animation. Now, I'm going to take this player and leave him called player 1. I'm going to drag him in here. So at the moment, he's got his sprite default, and we can see that there's nothing there to show for him. So let's just delete that and go back and see if there's a different way to drag him in. So let's go down to walk 1 and drag that in here and see what we get. Well, immediately you can see here's my character, and if I zoom back out, here is my character in the sprite editor. Okay, or sorry, in the scene editor. So that's how we'll drag in our character. Now if I press play, this is a particularly boring game, as we have our sprite, it's not animated, it doesn't move. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a 2D object, and we're going to create a sprite, and this new sprite here, we're going to have a look at what we can put in for this. So there's all of the assets I've brought in, but then there's a couple of basic ones here that so I can put that in, or I can, what I want to put in is a simple background. And you can see when I zoom in here, I've got a white box. So I'm going to take that sprite and go to its scale. And I'm not interested in scaling it up that way. What I want to do is I want to scale it on X. And all I really want to do is just want to create a ground plane. So I'm going to take this and place it here. Now I'm going to give it some physics. So I'm going to create, I'm going to go add component, physics 2D, and I'm going to add in a, what we put in? We'll put in a I do not want a joint. What do I want? Not a circle collider, an edge collider. There, I'm losing my mind. I found it now. So I've put in an edge collider, and you can see that it has an edge, so I can actually edit that so that if I move this to here, that's fine. And then if I move back to the end here, I can take that and place it there. So roughly this green edge runs along the top of my white surface. Now if this white area kind of was, not a linear terrain, I could add in extra vertices here and kind of try and map the shape of it. But for now, that's enough. So now this has physics, so I can fall onto this. So I'm going to go to my sprite here. I'm going to go physics 2D, and I'm not going to add an edge collider to that. What I want to add in is a box collider, which is this one here. And I also want to add in physics 2D, is I want to add in a rigid body to give it physics, so it'll fall under the weight of gravity. Otherwise, it will have physics but not move. So this here, we'll rename this ground. So ground here has physics but doesn't have a rigid body, so it's not going to go anywhere, so it's going to stay still. This, on the other hand, has a rigid body, so it will fall under gravity, and because it's a box collider, it should stop. So let's just see that in action. So what we have is a sprite character falling under the weight of gravity onto a ground plane beneath. Excellent. So now what we want to do is we want to start working on this animation here to create an animation for my character. So I want to open this window here, which is my animation window. So it says to create, to begin animating, create an animator and an animation clip. So I'm going to hit create here, and it's going to say where do you want to create this. So we're going to go in here, and we've already got one, so I'm going to select the one that I've made earlier, and all I'm really doing is just inheriting the name for it, and hit save. Do I want to replace it? Yeah. So this is my animation, and I've just realized I've added that animation to my ground plane, so let's not do that. Let's close or exit from that. I'm going to delete this here, and I'll come back and explain this window to you in a moment. So instead of using this with, so I'm going to remove the animator component. So I was going to select walk, so that was what I should have done, and then going to animation and animation. I want to create something. I do. This guy here, and again we'll write over it, and here we are. So now what I want to do, so my spaceman animation here, in order to get this to play, these sprites, what I need to do is select them, all of them, and then drag and drop them in here. And now when I press play, you can see my spaceman walking. Now his walk is quite fast, and you might like that. It's quite comic. But what we can do to slow that down is this is based on 60 frames a second. So that's my sample rate. So maybe I'll slow that to say 12. And now when I play, oh no, I've gone the other way. So from 60, let's go 120. Oops. So 60 is what we started with, and then if I go to 12, you can see it's much longer. So now when we press play, you can see it's a much shorter or much longer gap between the frames, so it's slower. So if I went to 120, he'd be even faster, and like I said, 60 is the default. So that's fine. That is our animation. So I'm going to close this window now. If we wanted more than one animation, which we'll do shortly, we'll go create a new clip and we can add in as many as we like. So, so let's just have a quick look back over into this window here, into our assets window, and see what we have. So there's new things here. So this is an animation, but these two things are not animations. These two. So this is an Animator Controller. So I'm going to delete this one because I shouldn't have made that one. I made it by mistake. So we'll pretend that didn't happen. And this is what I have here. So this is Spaceman Walk, which is the name of our animation. And this here is an Animation Controller. So this is this window. And we're going to spend quite a bit of time looking at animation controllers, but basically, as the name suggests, it's where you can control animations. Now in this instance here we've got one, so it's not terribly interesting. But if we have multiple animations, we'll want to link them. So this here, this little arrow, is linking the entry point of the animation and which animation we play. So I can right click here and go make transition and link to other animations if I had them. So we can set up the relationship between this animation and another one, say to go from a walk to a run, or if we were shooting or jumping or dying or whatever other animations we want to use. But for now, we're just going to leave it as is. So we have one basic animation, which is our walk cycle. The only addition we're going to make is we're going to add in one more, but we're not going to use any additional frames. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our walk here, our character, and we're going to go back to our animation window, and we have our Spaceman Walk. So let's add one more here, and we'll call this still. So while we're not moving, we'll have an animation that is us standing still, and all I need for that is one frame. So rather than bringing all of these in, I'll just bring in one, and when I press play, it's playing the animation here, but my character is not moving. Okay, so now we have two animations. So if I go back to my Animator Controller, now I can set up the relationship between these. So I'm going to make a transition between them. So let's see what we'll do. We will say, so we'll go from still to walk. So what I want is a parameter. I want some sort of variable that I can change. So I'm going to create one, and I'm going to make it a bool, so as in Boolean logic. So ands and nors, but normally true or false. So I'm going to create a Boolean, and I'm going to call it walk. And over here, this is the transition. I'm going to add one in here, and I'm going to say when walk is true, go from still to walk. And then this one here, and I don't need to create a new parameter. All I need to do is create a new condition, and that condition is when it's false. So if I'm walking and I'm no longer walking, so basically if I take my finger off the key, I'll go back to this animation, which is me standing still. So that's how the Animator Controller works, and as I said, we can have tons of these. We can have a very complicated web of connections between different animations, and we can set up not only a condition whether things are true or false, but we can have things accelerate and decelerate, and we can have multiple variables, and we can also tweak the sort of the duration of the transition between one animation and another. So we've loads of things to control here that we'll explore later in the year. So now we have a ground plane with collision. We've got a character that we have brought in and given two animations to, and here are our two animations, and this is our controller. So now we want some sort of script that's going to control this, and it's going to control, it's going to turn on and off this bool here, so that the animation will either play this one or this one, and also it's going to move the character left and right. So we need a character script. So in order to do that, we're going to launch MonoDevelop, and MonoDevelop comes with Unity when you download it and install it. So this is MonoDevelop here. So I'm actually clicking on a script I made earlier, so one that's not in this project yet. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to right click and create a new folder, and I'm going to call this scripts. Okay, and then in my scripts folder I'm going to create a C# script, and I'm going to call this player control, and I'm going to double click on it, and it should open that script in MonoDevelop, which will open here. So let's not hang. So yeah, so it's going to zoom in here. So this is, at the moment, this is my script. There's literally nothing in it. So at the void start, so at the beginning, it does nothing. Void update, which is every frame, it does nothing. So we're just going to delve in here and do some stealing. We're going to copy and paste. There's lots and lots of things in this script that we don't need. But what we are going to do is we're going to say so I'm going to start with this this thing here. So we're going to go Control C, and we're going to bring this over to void update and go Control V. So this is an input, and we're going to open brackets here to have, so if input get key code right arrow. So when I press the right arrow, I'm going to put something in here in the brackets to do something. So what do we want it to do? Well, we're going to say we want it to move. Okay, so transform.translate vector2.right, so we're moving the right arrow, we're moving in the right direction, times speed times time. So we haven't set up this variable speed, so we're going to have to do that. So again, I'm going to steal this. I'm going to do Control C and Control V. Now this is coming up red because it's saying, aha, you've put in a variable and you haven't defined what it is. So let's steal this variable here, its definition. So it's a float, so which is a decimal number, and we've given it a starting value of 2. So I'm going to go Control C, and you can see there this is positioned at the very top of the script. So this goes up here, Control V. So we have this variable called speed, and now this is no longer red. Now time.tilde_time is used to connect, say, a velocity here or a movement to real time as opposed to the clock speed of the processor. If we just put it in without this, so it would multiply it by speed, we could get some funny results. We could get a really fast PC processing this more quickly than a slower one, and therefore the game would play at different speeds on different computers. By adding this in, it sort of makes it the same on every machine, regardless of the machine's performance, assuming the machine can actually play the game in the first place. So we've got input from a key, and we've got movement. Okay, so let's just save that. Go back into Unity, and then we're going to take this script here and drag and drop it onto our player, and we're going to press play and see what happens. So our game is playing, and now I'm going to press the right arrow on my keyboard, and when I press the right arrow, the character moves right. but the animation is not playing. So we still have this here, this walk Boolean parameter that we need to access. So how do we do that? So let's go back to our script here. So we have another variable here called Animator. So I'm going to cross or copy that across is also a variable. Now why do we need to do that? Well, in our game you can see earlier on I created a one of these for the ground plane by mistake. But if I had 10 different characters, I might have 10 different animation controllers. So, and each character might have completely different animations. So we need to be able to tell Unity which animator controller, so which set of animations we want to access. So this here is a variable saying, you know, access this one. So we'll tell it which one in a moment. And then after we've done that, if we just look down here, we've got this here. It says animator.setBool walk is true. So let's copy that and paste that in over here. So again, it's in under the key code. Now there's something else that we need to add in as well to make this work, and it's sort of it may not be immediately intuitive. And that is this here. Hang on, is there one just false? There is not, so we'll just do this. So I'm just going to copy that. We'll see, bring it over here, and I'm going to put this underneath here. So I'm going to go, this is a second if statement. So we're going to say, if I'm not pressing any key, right, then we want this, I'll put this down here, to be false. So that will stop the character from walking, so it'll stop the animation from playing. So if I press the key while it's being pressed, set it to be true and play the animation, and when I'm not pressing any key, set the animation to be false, and therefore I won't play any animation, or I'll play the animation that is our standing still one. Okay, so let's jump back over here and see what we've got. Now when I click on the character, that was that little pause there, was it updating the script. So I don't need any information about the sprite or its box collider or its rigid body for now, but I am interested in this here, its animator. Now I didn't add this to it. When I created these sprites, this component, the animator component, was added to this sprite. Now it says controller is walk 1. That's excellent. But down here I've got a script. This is the script that we've made called player control, and it says animator none. So I should be able to drag and drop that in there. Sometimes it won't let you, so what you have to do is click on this little circle, and it's saying what object, you know, are you referring to, and the one we're referring to is walk 1. So I'll double click on that, and then it's the walk 1's animator, which is actually this one here. So that's what we want to reference. So now let's see if it'll work. Let's press play. So we have come to rest, and we are not, we're playing this still animation. I'm going to press the right key, and I'm walking, and I'll let go, and now I'm back to my still animation. So what we've done there in 29 minutes, we have brought in a sprite sheet, we have cut up the sprite sheet into individual components, we have created an animation and set it to be a walk cycle, and then we have written a very short script which not just moves the character but also turns on and off the animation when we press or let go of the key. So that's all we're going to do for this tutorial, and what we're going to do over the next series of tutorials is we're going to make ourselves hopefully an interesting side-scrolling 2D game. So that's enough for now.